I think the big takeaway for me from today was feeling like there's this community of AI people in Maine. I think that's exciting to see, both for my own connections, but also thinking about the future of Maine. The audience had people across generations. That's really nice to see.
Got it.
And I think
This is what you're looking for?
I walked away feeling like
It was
this
on
could have been a
Fernando.
full week. It would have been great to make connections,
Yes.
and just knowing that there's this community here, I think is really nice. I think when it comes to ocean science, there's definitely potential for us to lead in AI in different ways. We won't lead in every way. I think AI is just beginning to get into the ocean science world, so there's a lot of opportunity, and it's a question of figuring out what are the strengths of Maine. We have lots of different communities up and down the coast that interact with the ocean in lots of different ways, and I think leveraging that as a strength and just our connection with the natural world in general, that's not something that you find everywhere. And I think it's really important for those people who are thinking about algorithms and thinking about AI to also have those connections with the natural world if you're thinking about using AI as it connects to the environment, like the ocean. So we launched the center, the Tandy Center for Ocean Forecasting, about 2 years ago. And we work with all kinds of different stakeholders. It could be aquaculture, fishing industry, it could be managers, it could be groups doing educational programs to develop forecasts that can be used in the ocean. A couple of examples, we have a forecast for toxic algae, which we send out to the aquaculture industry every week through the growing season, so that each location knows what's the probability that they might be closed down due to toxic algae in the coming week. And that's something we've worked together with them to develop. So we've used their feedback as we develop it, and we still do make changes every year based on the feedback that we get from them. And that's been a real success, and we've even started using the same model outside of Maine to develop new toxic algal forecasting systems. We're working a couple of other places in the US and a couple of places in Africa as well. We just got back from Morocco in December working with the aquaculture industry there to help them develop some similar early warning systems for toxic algae. We do have more of a green light in working with environmental data than working with, say, human demographic data or that kind of thing. But I think the same concerns are there. I mean, the data that you collect from the environment and put into algorithms that are helping make decisions about the environment, those decisions affect people too, just like the decisions that credit card companies or healthcare companies make about people. We all live in this environment. We interact with it on a daily basis. And so while use of environmental data is not regulated as heavily, the same questions are really important to be asking yourself if you're involved in developing AI, in answering any kind of environmental question or making, especially when it comes to decision making that affects people. There's an ongoing controversy right now regarding the management of the endangered right whale and how it interacts with the lobster fishery, particularly in Maine. And that controversy has been ongoing for a while, and there are many perspectives on it. One of the real challenges with trying to balance the different management needs is that the models and the data we collect don't do a great job covering parts of coastal Maine where a lot of the lobster fishing happens. And I think people on many sides of the discussion wind up being frustrated that decisions have to be made with really high uncertainty when it comes to data and models. And I think that there's a role for machine learning and AI to help both guide data collection and improve the models that are being used, so that when it does come down to discuss the fine details of places in coastal Maine, we aren't working under this big cloud of uncertainty. Both the Monterey Bay and the MSC certification are advising not to eat lobsters, and I know that those decisions are controversial. I follow this. There are multiple articles in the news media every day, and you'll find all kinds of different perspectives on whether that should or should not be the case. The big change to happen recently is that when the omnibus bill passed and was signed into law, that included more time for managers and regulators to figure out what needs to happen. And it also buys more time for the fishing industry to figure out how to use new technologies. That decision was controversial too. I mean, everything about this is controversial. It's a really hard issue, but the way it looks like right now, at least in terms of regulations, is that there's a few more years to figure things out, which could be really good for data collection, for that aspect of it. Consumers and other parts of the supply chain, whether or not to buy certain fish and shellfish based on, they have these different criteria of sustainability and well-managed environment. And each one has a different set of criteria. But there's nothing binding about those listings. They're voluntarily adopted by different restaurants or grocers or things like that, or just everyday consumers. Sometime we've had Northeastern students doing the co-op program. We had a couple of students this past year who were just excellent. One of them is still working with us. And then we teach an ocean forecasting class at Colby College in January. So there are lots of opportunities for students to interact. The internships are open nationwide, and so the student who got the ball rolling on this toxicity forecast was a student from Southern Maine Community College, Izzy Grasso. So it was her work initially that helped us to figure out how we could use neural networks to make predictions using the toxicity data. And that turned into a proposal with aquaculturists and Maine DMR as collaborators, and now we have this live system up and running. The Tandy Center is also an experimental place where interns and people can come in and play with new forecasting ideas that might or might not have application eventually. And so some of them will sort of rise to the top and become real-world forecasts that actually help people. And others that don't, we still learn from those, and they make for great intern projects and that sort of thing.